Well, how many of you feel like your days are going by? All right, yeah, I tell you, this Andy and Eric and Mike and I, we get together every week and kind of do this running partner thing we've been talking about. Man, this last Thursday when we got together, I could swear we had just met the day before. I mean, that week just flies. It's amazing how fast life is going by. And I know for us, many times, like when you greet someone, you say, hey, how you doing? The normal response is fine or good. But what would be the third most, I think, popular response? Busy and tired. I feel like almost every time I ask somebody, you're kind of going past we're not just doing how you doing? Fine. And you go by. If you actually look someone in the eye and say, hey, how you doing? Almost every person will say, man, just really busy. I'm just really busy. Well, you know what? This whole idea that we're talking about, this idea of running for your life, and saying that for that to really happen, for a full life to take place, you got to actually have some significant relationships. The second hurdle we want to talk about this week is this. Is sometimes one of the biggest hurdles to us having significant relationships is just the fact that we're way too busy. There's just so much stuff in our life that it's hard to find those relationships. And being Mother's Day today, and if you're new here, you don't know this, but if you've been here for a while, you know I lost my mom 17 years ago. She was 54 years old, way too young. So maybe some of you are in that boat today. Sometimes Mother's Day is a celebration and sometimes it's not. Especially if you've just recently lost your mom. I'll never forget that there's all those firsts, first Mother's Day without your mom. And I know for me specifically, it's hard sometimes for me to remember that because my mom was like a running partner. I'd never used those terms before with my mom. But when I thought about today, it's like that's what she was. She was a running partner for me. Man, you want to talk about someone, she was the one person I knew in my life who loved me, which we've talked about, finding that safe person. But my mom had no problem telling me the truth either, She was good that way. And that's so huge when we talk about these type of relationships that we want to have. So when I lost my mom, man, you lose this huge part of your life. And then you go to a funeral, right? And I don't know about you, but man, when you go to a funeral of someone that you love and someone who's important in your life, it's a very unique experience. You can't help, I don't think you can help, but go to a funeral of someone you love without stopping to think about how you lived your life. Could we have had more time together? Are there things that we could have shared? You reminisce on all the good things and you just think back. In fact, I was at a funeral just a few weeks ago. It's the same thing. Almost, unless you're kind of hardened in your heart and you're just cruising by that you don't take time to stop and think about it. But mostly, normally, when you go to a funeral, you'll stop and think about your life. And you'll just go, man, am I doing what I want to be doing? Am I living the life that I really want to be living? And much of the time, we're not. Stephen Covey, in his book, 7 Habits for Highly Effective People, I've shared this many times. We do it in our small group. He has this great exercise where you imagine yourself at your funeral. And when you imagine what you want people to say there. And lots of times what happens is you realize, holy smokes, I want people to say this, but I don't know if they would. And then he says this great thing. He says, many times, the reason that we're not living the life we want is because we can't say no. Anybody have that problem? I can't say no. I can't say no to the people around me. I can't say no to the work around me. I can't say no to my own stuff, my own desires, my own flesh. And next thing you know, you got so many things that are spreading you so thin and you're so busy that when you stop and take a time out and actually look at your life, you go, I'm not living the life I want to live. And that's kind of what we're talking about today. And I love what Covey said. He said, but I can tell you what. He goes, you can say no if you have a greater yes. And what you've got to figure out is what your greater yes is. Because once you've done that work and you know, I really do want to live for this, then when things come that aren't as important and they're trying to steal you away from this, you can say no to them because you've already made the commitment to a greater yes. So here's the question, you guys. What's the greater yes in life? I believe that the greater yes was what we've been trying to talk about the last month. The greater yes is a yes to God and a yes to people. To people around us. That's what it's all about. This verse, Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1, is kind of the theme verse that we've been using throughout this whole series. Go ahead and throw that up there. And it says this, therefore, since we're surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race that's marked out for us. So again, what we need to remember here today is there actually is a race. God is saying, you guys are running a race, and I've marked it out for you. I have a race for you to run. Well, what's that race? Well, when they came to Jesus, and they said, hey, Jesus, what's the greatest thing? What's the most important thing in life? He said, you got to love God with all your heart, your soul, and your mind, and your strength. And you got to love each other like you love yourself. Everything else falls into that. We make it very complicated, but it's actually not. You love God with all your being, and then you love each other as you love yourself. One of my other favorite verses that kind of sums up the whole thing is Paul says in this one place, he says, the only thing that counts. Okay, now if you're reading the Bible, and an author says the only thing that counts, that might be a good time to go, I wonder what that is. And he says the only thing that counts is faith expressing itself through love. So anything that counts. See, because that's what faith is. Faith is, I believe in you, God, and therefore I trust you, therefore I love you. And then I'm going to express that by loving those around us. Now, when I think about that, I got a couple guesses. Just maybe these might be true. Here's my first guess. That all of us actually in this room, there's not one of us sitting here, I wouldn't think, who probably needs to take a little more time loving God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and loving the people around you like you do love yourself. That'd be my guess. Here's my second guess. I guess that probably every single one of you in this room, when it is your day and you're the one laying in the casket, and people stand up and they decide to talk about you, my guess is that every single one of us would want the people to stand up around us and say, you know what? This person loved God with all their heart, soul, mind, and strength, and they loved me. My guess is that's what we want people to say. Probably when we're laying there in that casket, of course you're not there, but when your body is in that casket, you're not going to hope that people get up and talk about all your accolades. It's just a guess of mine. Because when it all comes down to it, most of us are longing to know that we're good with God and that we've been good with each other. Well, here's the reality, guys. Often, I think the problem is God has marked out a race for us, and we're running the wrong race. We're running the wrong race. There's a name for this race. Anybody know what it is? Yeah, the rat race. The rat race. I actually Googled rat race. Found some very interesting things. But I got on Wikipedia. Is Wikipedia not amazing? I met this guy a couple of weeks ago down in Orlando. He's from Idaho, and he's on Wikipedia. I'm like, that's amazing. I'm like, am I on Wikipedia? You know, I mean, they have something about everything. But here you go. This is what Wikipedia has to say about rat race. A rat race is a term used for an endless, self-defeating, or pointless pursuit. How's that for a... It conjures up the image of the futile efforts of a lab rat trying to escape while running around a maze or in a wheel. In an analogy to the modern city, many rats in a single maze run around making lots of noise, bumping into each other, and then they put this in italics, which is interesting, but ultimately achieve nothing meaningful, either collectively or individually. I was very impressed. The rat race. We're busy, we're running fast, and we feel trapped. And if we ever actually take time out and think about it, we realize that ultimately we're achieving nothing meaningful, either collectively or individually. So you know what? I think that's why many of us don't want to even stop. Because I don't want to look and see of what I'm really doing with my life. In fact, John Ortberg, an author, he says this. The truth is, as much as we complain about it, how many of you complain about being busy? Right? Because that's the other thing. Oh, I'm just so busy. The truth is, as much as we complain about it, we are drawn to hurry. Because it makes us feel important. Anybody feel important? Hey, look at my schedule. You know, I'm really important. I think we need to look in there. I'm really stupid is what we need to say. But it makes us feel important. It keeps the adrenaline pumping. It means we don't have to look closely at our heart or our life because it keeps us from feeling our loneliness. So sometimes we're drawn to be in a hurry because we don't even want to stop and think that, oh my gosh, what I'm really giving my life to is not what I want to give my life to. And then I love Lily Tomlin. She says, the trouble with the rat race is that even if you win, you're still a rat. So, let's be honest about this rat race. Monday, I was just having my time with God. And by the way, which is a really good idea. And every once in a while, he just shows up. Well, he showed up pretty strong on Monday and just revealed a lot of stuff in my heart that just wasn't right. I think it's called sin. And, but just ways I was living my life, things I'm spending my life on. And it was a lot in this whole loving area. And when you realize that, all of a sudden, kind of my conclusion, which was separate from this message. When I realized it, I plunked my journal into my message because I'm like, I got to remember this. But I think sometimes life is just busy. Susie and I had a great conversation last night. Being a mom of 3 little kids, that's just busy. And you don't have a choice. But sometimes a lot of our choices of a lot of the experience of the rat race is our own choice. And sometimes I think the rat race is usually a love of something other than God or others. And we give our life to things that someday when we're laying in a casket, we're going to not even care about. And it's futile. And it's like, what was that all about? So what happens is you guys were running in the wrong direction. Because usually, many times, what's happening is we're running after what's fulfilling me. I'm looking for what's going to make me happy. I'm not loving God. I'm not loving people. I'm about me. That's what God was revealing to me. That's the wrong race. That's not the race marked out for us. And that's one that causes lots of problems. So you know what you need to do? When you're doing something wrong, you need to take a time out. Anybody put their kids in time out? Absolutely. When they're not doing the right thing, one of the things, you get to your room and take a time out. Sit in this chair and take a time out. Think about it. That wasn't right. Okay? What's a good coach do? What's a good coach do when the momentum is tanking? Because the team is beating you and defeating you. It's not working. A good coach goes, time out. Stop that. That's not good. And if you're the problem, he calls a timeout and sits you on the bench, right? He goes, you're not helping the team here. We got a problem. You need to come down, sit down, and think about it. Get your mind back in gear, and then you can get back in the game, okay? So I'm thinking today, what I'm hoping for, what I'm praying for, is for you and for me. I feel like God put me in a timeout on Monday, and I want you to come join me. I want you to stop, and I want you to think about your life. And if you're really spending it on the things that you want to. And so as we think about that, being hurry and busy, I ran into this story. This was an airline pilot. It's his all-time favorite story of one of the things he experienced on an airplane. There was an elderly couple that had come on the plane, and there was a businessman who was in a big hurry. And he got behind this couple. Okay, so he had to wait for them to go through the whole ticketing process, and then they were side by side as they were going down kind of the narrow hall, and so when he couldn't get past them, and he's just getting more frustrated. They get into the plane, they're having a hard time getting their bags up, so he can't get to his seat, and now he's really getting irritated. And then when it comes time for the dinner, the older gentleman got out, had to get up into his bag to get some pills, and the bag fell to the floor and spilled, and the guy just finally just blew up. And he said this. He goes, loud enough so everybody could hear. He goes, what's the matter with you people? I'm amazed you ever get anywhere. Why can't you just stay home? And so, yeah, ouch, exactly. And so then, just to show his anger, he got in his seat, and he went bam, and reclined the seat as fast as he could, and it caused the older gentleman's food to come fly off his tray and spill all over him and his wife. And so the flight attendant came up and she goes, I am so sorry. She goes, is there anything I can do to help you? And the guy said, he goes, it's our 50th wedding anniversary, and we've never flown before. This is our first time. And I just wondered if, and she goes, I am so sorry. She goes, can I, she's cleaning them up and stuff. And then she said, could I just get you a bottle of wine, just to celebrate? And she goes, sure. And so she brings him the bottle of wine. The guy pours a glass, and he stands up, and he gives a toast. And then he took the bottle of wine and he poured it over the head of the guy in front of him. and And that's what your response is great, because the pilot said that's exactly what happened in the whole cabin, because everybody could hear this guy. So the whole plane erupted in applause as this guy's sitting there with this bottle of wine poured over his head. Now, stop for a second and think, what's going on inside this guy's head? Can you imagine? I mean, I don't know. Is he finally humbled? Or is he just more angry? What's he experiencing, in his heart as he's drenched now with this bottle of wine? And then I just sat there and I thought, what you guys? We've all had that type of experience. See, that was kind of like, that's a great analogy for, dude, you need a timeout. And just pour it on you and chill. And the reality is, some of us have had very embarrassing timeouts like that. Some of us have had people come into your life that you care about, let's say. Say, dude, you are so off track with your life. Maybe loved ones have come and just finally just poured a bottle of wine over your head and said, I'm done. You are so running the wrong race. Maybe your health is messed up, or maybe you've got caught up in things you don't even want to get caught up on, and you get exposed, and it's like, bottle of wine over your head, and you're just sitting there for everyone else to watch your life fall apart. See, this is kind of why I like God, and why Jesus makes so much sense to me, and why the scriptures are so powerful, because he doesn't want that to happen to your life. And so he says, you know what, you need to take a time out. I had one of those experiences happen about 5 or 6 months ago. I came home from work, and the kids greeted me at the door, and they said, close your eyes, Daddy, close your eyes, close your eyes. And so, I closed my eyes, and they lead me back into the back room, and I open up my eyes, and Mariah had decorated the whole back room all by herself. Crepe paper everywhere. She's 5 years old. She blew up balloons and tied them herself. I can't even do that. She just decorated this whole place up, and she had games played, and she made things and food ready for me. It was just unbelievable. And it was just a great night. So the next morning when I was getting ready to leave for work, I was, gave the kids goodbye, kisses and stuff, and I held her and I just looked at her. I said, Mariah, thank you so much for throwing me that party last night. And then I just said, so why did you do that? And she looked up at me and she said, because, Dad, you never get to be with us. Now, I'll be honest with you. I'm like, okay, something's changing. Susan and I feel like we work decently hard to try to make sure that we're home. But let's write, guys, or whoever of you who work, women or moms or dads. If you're both working, your kids are gone all day, right, from you. So that's my case. I don't get to see my kids all day long. And then I got some evening meetings, right? And then we're doing all this kind of stuff. And next thing you know, it's like, yeah, I'm thinking, man, but when I'm home, it's like, but Daddy, you don't really get to be with us very much. So I thought I'd throw you a party so we could be with you. And I'm telling you, Mariah put me in a timeout. And I want to say today is you can either choose to be in timeout or you can get put in a timeout. But man, I'm going to tell you, I'm not losing my family. I know when Verna was here, and Verna and Susie and I would work on my schedule all the time. We tried to figure out how to do this life, And then 2 months later, we go, okay, that didn't work. Let's try and figure this out again. We'd finagle it all around. We just did it again 2 weeks ago. Totally changed my whole schedule to try to figure out how to make this thing work. And I'm just going to be committed to that. It's just what has to happen. So here you go, you guys. If you could throw up Hebrews 12:1 again for me. It says a couple things that we're supposed to do. Let us throw off everything that hinders, right, and the sin that so easily entangles. And then it says, and let us run the race marked out for us. Let us run this race. Now, I don't have it on here, but Hebrews 12:2 says let us. So there's 3 let us. I might do a VeggieTales thing here someday. Let us throw off everything that hinders. Let us run the race marked out for us. And then Hebrews 12:2 says, and let us fix our eyes on Jesus. Fix your eyes on him. John Ortberg has this great quote. He says, if we want to follow someone, we can't go faster than the one who is leading. Isn't that great? I just love that. I just know right now, I'm guarantee you, most of us right now are going faster than the one that we're supposed to be following. And so Jesus, if we're following Jesus, you know what he does? It says he often withdrew. Often. He just got away. He took time outs. And he went and he hung out with his Father and he got away from everybody just to do that. And here's the other thing that's interesting about Jesus. So here's God like in the flesh, right? And I think his job was to come and save the world. Okay, that's like a big deal. Anybody else feel pressure at your job? So Jesus only has to come and save the world. Well, if he's got to save the world, man, you'd figure he's got to get out there and he's got to like save everybody. And so here's God in the flesh, and he says, yeah, and you know what? You know what I can handle? I can handle like 12 of you. That's all I got. So I'm going to hang out with the 12 of you, and I'm going to come on, and we're going to live life together. And then, out of the 12, he says, and really, to get like really close to me and intimate, like to really inside stuff, I can handle 3. Peter, James, and John. Do you ever wonder? I always wonder how the other 9 felt. Like, God, what's going on in there? You know, how come those guys get to? But Jesus had this capacity in the flesh to say, Peter, James, and John, let's go. The 12 of you, let's do this. Now, the amazing thing to me about Christ is he was able to touch the masses, but he was able to touch them and then move on. And then live his life committed to these few. You know, so who like, I just sat there and I thought, well, who do I think I am then? I'm certainly not God in the flesh. We all know that. How many can I handle? How many can you handle? What are you doing with your life? See, that's where this running partner thing comes along, because all of a sudden you realize, I've only got so much capacity as a person. And if you're married, running partners better never take precedence over your spouse. And then if you got kids, because your heart's only got so much capacity. So, I right now, that's what I'm trying to figure out. That's my life. I'm trying to figure out, how do I do this thing so that I'm actually pouring, because running partners take time. Good marriages and families take time. So I got this much time. How do I make that happen? A couple warnings for you. I think our whole issue is, you guys, we've got some overload problems. For some of us, our overload is people, okay? Sometimes we've got so many people in our life and we're spread so thin that there is no depth to any of the relationships, especially to the ones that we want to stand up at our funeral and say, yeah, Dad really loved me. And so we got to be careful of that. Some of you, or maybe all of us, it's work. Work overload. It's just, man, we're just so busy and so harried. We get home and you're so concentrated on this work, you bring your work home and it just tears everything apart. How about information overload? Oh my gosh, it's like, it's just horrible. The computer's like, that's part of my issue. I'm like, my head is just spinning. I got so many thoughts going inside of here that I can't really think about the ones that I love. It made me stop and remember, like before I got married, when I was engaged, you know what was cool? When I was engaged, I was in school. I didn't have a whole lot of friends. I was kind of alone. And so you know what I did all day long? I thought about Susie. Remember those days? Remember before you were married, when all you did was think about the other person? And man, when you can think about the other person, you're creative and you come up with these cool dates and good gifts. And now all of a sudden, man, it's like, no, I got a job and I got responsibility. I got 3 kids. And I got, oh my God, it's Mother's Day tomorrow. You know, I mean, you haven't even thought about it, right? Because we got information overload. There's so much going on here. I can't even get to the thoughts that I used to have for the people I love. Something wrong with that picture. Some of us have kid activity overload. Okay? Now, this is a whole other message. My kids are 6'4", too, so I'm just getting into this game. I don't understand the whole thing yet, but I know I've watched my brothers and my sisters who are older than me with their kids who are now into college and watched this unbelievable challenge of how to be a mom and a dad in America where your kids have to be in 500 activities to be healthy. Right? And we got to figure that piece out because next thing you know, you got activity overload. And you aren't really getting to the love. And then stuff, right? Some of us have got overload stuff. That's why this garage sale is such a great idea that we're doing. Because we've got so much stuff, and everything that you've got takes time. And some of us have so many things that we're taking care of that we don't have time for the things we really care about. And that's the biggest one, man, where you're going to die someday and go, what was I doing? Polishing our stuff, making sure the stuff is all good. And it's just, we're just going to get there and go, oh, you mean I don't bring it with me? That's it? We've got overload. And sometimes, you guys, and this I had a great conversation with Susie last night. Sometimes this whole busyness is just forced on us. There's just, life can be at times seasons of really being busy. But like Sue said, but even in that, you guys, we have choices. You always have a choice of how you're going to spend your time. But what I want to do right now is just say, especially, last comment on that, especially for you moms here today, where it's like, man, this is my stage, my life, my kids, there's so much. That's why I love what Eric said. It's a blessing to you, an honor to you for the way you pour yourself out. It's unbelievable. But what I want to do in closing here today is just share a little bit of a couple verses just to caution us. Because sometimes, you guys, we're choosing this life. And we don't have to. Okay? So, here we go. Matthew 6, 31 through 34. It says this. This is Jesus talking. And he says, so don't worry, saying, what shall we eat? Or what shall we drink? Or what shall we wear? And I was thinking, or what shall we drive? Or what internet service should we have? Or what cell phones? Don't worry. For the pagans run after all those things. Don't you love that word, pagans? Hi, well, I'm a pagan. And I'd look for another version of the Bible that says something like, what does this mean? Just so you know, this word pagan comes from in the Greek, it literally means nations. That's the literal translation, nations. But so you have to understand Israel to understand why they would use this word. See, because Israel, the Jewish people were God's chosen people. They were his chosen nation. They were the ones who had access to God like no other nation did. And everybody else was called the nations. Anybody else who was outside the special relationship with God. So really what that word means is people who don't have a relationship with God. People who don't know God. What they do, Jesus was saying, people who don't know me, he goes, they run after. Isn't that interesting? They run after all these things. And your heavenly Father knows that you need him. But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. Therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. So you guys, here's the deal. We run after these things. Guess what? You do need a car? Sure. Do you need clothes? Yes. We don't want people running naked in church. You need these things. But the problem is, we go way beyond need to, I run after these things. And I feel like one warning that Jesus is saying to us, you guys, is if you're running, if that's the race you're running, it's the wrong race. If you give your time and your effort and your talent and your mental energy to things and to stuff, that's the wrong race. And you need to take a time out. You just need to stop for a second and look at your life and say, is this what I want people to say about me when I die? That I ran after stuff really well. This dude could accumulate like you've never seen. Wow. No. That's not what we want. And then, what's interesting, you guys, so seriously, this accumulation effect. I know Susie and I, the rest of this week, we're going to look around the house and get ready for this garage sale happening Saturday. And again, if you want to take part in this, you can either call the name in there and get it out of your house and get it into a storage bin, or you can bring it here before 9 o'clock, between 7 and 9 on Saturday morning, and you can just unclutter your life with all the stuff that you have to take care of that you don't really even care about. And get it out of here. And the coolest part is, when the garage sale's done, you don't have to take what didn't sell back home. We'll gather everything. We're just going to give it to the missions around here and to the people who could use it in the community. So join us on Saturday, and let's make that thing happen. All right? Okay. So, but when Jesus says this, he goes, you guys are running after these things. Then he says, but, verse 33, but seek first his kingdom. You guys, don't run that race. Run the race that's marked out for you. And what is the race that's marked out for you? Love God and love people. Live in faith and express it with love. And that's it. And that's the only thing that matters. That is the greater yes. So make sure you're not running after stuff that someday you're just not going to care about. And then the only other verse I want to read for you real quick in closing is this. 1 Timothy 6:9. And this says this: people who want to get rich fall into temptation. Now, and I'm using this one because we live in America. And let's just be honest with ourselves. Much of the reason we're busy is because we feel this need to become rich. Now, and we would say, well, I'm not rich compared to so-and-so. But as you guys know, I mean, compared to the rest of the world, it's sickening how rich we are. And so we have to be careful that, and it's people who want to get rich. And there's actually nothing wrong with being rich, but there's this, the warning today from God is to say, but be careful if you want that. Because lots of times getting rich isn't even about money. Sometimes it's about prestige. Sometimes it's about control. Sometimes it's about saying, I'm over this, I'm this position. And next thing you know, man, you are totally off the wrong race. Because look what it says. People who want to get rich fall into temptation and into a trap. Interesting. They fall. Now, if we're trying to run a race and you fall, that's probably not real good. Right? So again, God is just saying here, He's saying, hey, I have a race marked out for you. And I want to make sure that if you want to win that prize, that you know how not to fall. Let me tell you one way that you could fall. One way that you could fall is if you desire and want to be rich. You could fall into a temptation and a trap. Doesn't that fit right with Hebrews 12, 1 and 2? Same thing. Things that hinder us and things that entangle us. Traps. Those are the things that can make us fall. And look at it. They plunge men into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. And some people eager for money have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. And I know that some of you are sitting here today, and you know, because of your passion to get rich or to get the position or to get the stuff or to do whatever, you got off the race. And the people closest to you took a proverbial bottle of wine and they poured it over your head. And they said, I'm done. No more. And you know what? This is why I love God, because He's saying it doesn't have to be that way. He says, and don't you love the word? What does it say? They wandered from the faith. Here we are supposed to be running a race, right? And you wander from the faith. Can you imagine watching the Olympics? And a guy's in the blocks, he's ready to go. Oh. And he just kind of walks off and starts looking at something else. Can you imagine that? No, that would never happen in the Olympics. Why? Because, man, they have fixed their eyes on the prize and they're giving everything they've got for it. And here you and I are on this tiny little short life on earth, someday heading towards eternity, where that's where the whole prize is going to happen someday. And you and I are like, and constantly going, oh, and we just wander. And then we tie things around our ankles so we have to hop. So we fall. We do all this stuff. And the Bible's saying, no. Run the race marked out for you. Don't wander. And then he says, you man of God, flee all of this. Verse 11. Flee all of this. And pursue righteousness, godliness, faith, love, endurance, and gentleness. If you're here today, and you are a man of God or a woman of God, or you want to be a man of God or a woman of God, or if you're thinking about being a man of God or a woman of God, if that's you today, then I just want to challenge you to flee all this other stuff and to begin to pursue righteousness, godliness, faith, and love, endurance, and gentleness. And in 2 Timothy 2:22, it also says this. Once you flee the stuff and you begin to pursue these other things, he says then, and pursue these things along with those who call on the Lord out of a pure heart. You guys, there's our running partners. So I'm going to tell you right now, there's not one of us in this room, I've already shared one of my mind, there's not one of us in this room who doesn't wander off the path. There's not one of us in this room who doesn't have some stuff right now that's entangling us and that we're in danger of falling instead of running. There's not one of us. And I'm telling you, I need help. How about you? I need running partners in my life. So here's your 2 application points. For some of you, when we were thinking about the series, I just thought, you know what? For some of us, we're so busy, I don't have time to build a relationship with anybody. See, that's what I realized. I wasn't spending time with my running partners. Yeah, I've got running partners. Haven't seen them in a month, but I got them. That's no good. You got to find them, and you got to be able to spend some time together. And again, that might first be, go have a cookout. Go golfing. Just be together. But you got to make time to make that happen. And then the second piece, though, is this, you guys. And I've already said it, but let me just reiterate it. To run the race marked out for you, you're going to need somebody to come alongside you and help you stay on track. Every week when Andy and Mike and Eric and I get together, somebody has wandered. Somebody has gone like this. And then maybe we need to meet daily. But in a week, we can get us back on the path. And you can have that as well. So, band, come on up. Here's my closing thought for you. In America, or actually, here's my closing thought. What you need to do, you guys, what I need to do, is we need people to help us take a time out so that you won't get put into a timeout. Did you know your Heavenly Father loves you? See, on Monday, He put me in a timeout. And sometimes you will get put into timeouts. Sometimes you'll have bottles of wine poured on your head. But I guarantee you this, if you would start taking time out instead by your own choice, just like when my kids listen to me, I don't have to put them in timeout. If we'd start doing that with God, He wouldn't have to put us in timeout either. And so in our American culture, many times we feel like, holy smokes, you guys, if you're actually, going off and standing in a river and fly fishing, are you kidding me? How's that going to help the mission? How's that going to help get things done? We would call that like wasted time, right? Let's be honest. I feel that sometimes when I go home, I got stuff to do. I mean, to go outside and play Rapunzel? That's just what? That's wasted time, right? No, you guys, that is, as Mike's going to sing, that is time well wasted. And living in America, we got to remember that there's time that needs to be well wasted on God, and I'm actually the only thing that really matters.